Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really fascinating botanical mystery about a plant that, well, absolutely refused to die. If you're into discovering the hidden kind of underground systems that make our natural world so incredibly resilient, you are in exactly the right place. Let's get right into it. So, what actually happens when a potted plant wilts? We've all been there, right? You bring home this gorgeous, vibrant houseplant, you put it in the absolute perfect spot, and then a few weeks later, disaster. The leaves drop, the stem goes completely brown, and it looks literally lifeless. The gut reaction for most of us is pure disappointment, followed almost immediately by tossing the whole shebang straight into the compost bin. But as we're going to see in this explainer, throwing that pot away? Yeah, that might just be the biggest mistake a gardener can make. To figure out why, we're pulling from some really insightful gardening notes by a gardener named Ang. Ang ran into this exact same scenario with a brand new plant, but made one absolutely crucial, kind of passive choice: doing nothing. Literally nothing. As Ang put it, little did I know this turned out to be a great decision. Ang just left the dead-looking plant and its pot just sitting there. And that perfectly sets up our mystery for today. How on earth can keeping a wilted, supposedly dead plant lead to a great decision? What was hiding in that dirt?
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, a gardener's pleasant surprise, the Chinese New Year pagoda plant.
So, our timeline kicks off right around the Chinese New Year season. Ang bought a clerodendrum-paniculatum, which we usually just call the pagoda plant. Beautiful species for sure. But things went south. The foliage wilted, the main stem failed, and to the naked eye, the plant was a goner. But here is the wild card in our story. Ang kept the plant and the pot. They didn't dump the soil out, they didn't toss the wilted stem, they just let it sit there, completely untouched.
Which brings us to Section 2, the root sucker secret, how life hides beneath the soil. And this brilliantly illustrates the core of the mystery. Above ground, we have what Ang was seeing, a dead main stem and completely wilted foliage. It looks hopeless. But below ground, we have the hidden truth, an entirely alive, functioning underground root system. You see, when we look at a wilted plant, we're really only assessing half the organism, right? We judge its health entirely by what's happening up in the air, completely missing the complex, resilient biology that might be humming along perfectly fine in the dark soil underneath. So, the specific mechanism the pagoda plant used to pull off this magic trick is something called root suckers. Essentially, root suckers are underground runners sent by a plant to self-propagate. Instead of relying on, say, seeds dropping from the flowers up top, the plant uses its subterranean network to push out horizontal runners through the soil. Eventually, those runners shoot up brand new plant structures. It's a built-in, genius survival mechanism designed to make absolutely sure the plant's legacy continues, even when that primary stem completely fails. Let's walk through exactly how this works step by step. Step 1, the main stem wilts. This is the apparent death of the plant. But step 2 is where the recovery actually begins. The roots retain all their stored carbohydrates, even without leaves to photosynthesize. That root system is basically acting like a giant underground battery, holding on to all this rich stored energy. Then step 3. Utilizing all those stored carbs, new, incredibly vigorous sprouts, those are our root suckers, start growing directly out of the lateral root network, pushing right up through the soil as brand new life. Now, the really crucial takeaway here is that this miraculous comeback, it wasn't a fluke. Ang didn't just get incredibly lucky. Botanical research actually confirms that it is a highly effective, super common botanical trait for the pagoda plant to send up root suckers right after the main stem wilts. It's not a glitch. It is literally a designed self-propagation strategy. When the top dies, the bottom goes into absolute overdrive. All right, let's wrap this up with Section 3, transplanting the new sprouts, giving the survivors a new home. So, what do you actually do with these vigorous new survivors? Ang outlines some very practical next steps. First up, keep the original root network exactly as it is for now. You definitely don't want to shock the system while it's actively pushing out all that new growth. Next, Ang recommends a very specific strategy: harvesting a sandy potting mix from outdoors. That specific sandy texture is absolutely key, because once the timing is right, your final step is to transplant those new sprouts out of the old pot and into fresh new pots using that sandy mix. This gives them the absolute perfect environment to establish their own independent root systems. Which brings us to our final thought. We've seen how the pagoda plant hides this massive wealth of energy right beneath the surface, just waiting for the perfect moment to start over.
So I'll leave you with this. The next time your favorite houseplant wilts and you are so tempted to just toss the whole thing into the trash, take a second. Ask yourself, is that root system actually still alive, fully charged with carbohydrates, and just waiting to surprise you? Thanks for joining me on The Explainer today. Catch you next time.